39. Epilogue. 2 months later. Saving the world is a lot of work, but cleaning up the mess is too. Thankfully, it's a lot easier to find volunteers for the latter. The 2 months since Dahlgren's destruction went by amazingly quickly. In fact, much of the heavy lifting was organized by Daphne. The children did have to help a little in Sasquatch, though. Someone needed to explain in no uncertain terms that the war with Nasquat was over. A couple of children in a flying ship, a giant lightning storm, and some very scary words were enough. They installed Grunt as the interim leader to keep the lights on, while Sasquatch sorted themselves out politically. The armies of Zagos were allowed to return home. Everyone got to live. After that, both reasoned it would be quite some time before they wanted to visit the continent again. And now that the world could catch its collective breath at last, and something of a sense of normalcy returned to Lennis, it was time to celebrate. The Jurain government, somehow still headed by the same mostly useless mayor, organized a grand banquet, inviting dignitaries from all over as a gesture to bring the world back together. Of course, everyone that had helped the children along the way were also invited as special guests. It was being held in the most beautiful place that still remained standing, the floating temple. That night, all of Jurain was lit up with warm lights for the festival going on below, and looking out from the window down at it, all were 2 children.
It's so beautiful. It's like we're tiny little insects in a field full of twilight lilies,
Medea said, looking down at the festivities.
I bet it's actually more fun down there than it is up here.
She was wearing a new dress that they'd purchased in Masuda before leaving Sasquatch. It was a bright yellow dress with white floral patterns and longer in the back than it was in the front. The trailing part of the dress was made up of several tiers of fabric, the edges of which were frilled in such a way that made it almost look as if her dress truly was made of flowers. It was a bittersweet meeting to find Zeran there, tending Joyce's bakery.
Oh, probably, but there's no way the food is nearly as good,
Chesney remarked.
I made especially sure of that.
Chesney had a harder time finding something to wear. Growing up in a fishing village, the fanciest thing he owned was a set of clean clothes that didn't have any rips. To his utter joy, though, there had been many survivors in Ray Old, and a few of the women, his mother included, made him a formal outfit traditional to the village. White silk shirt, rimmed with a blue and white patterns of fish and waves around the hems, plus black pants and a red silk sash around the waist. She laughed, and it was like the tinkling of little bells to his ears.
Well, at least you keep your promises. You should have seen the look Daphne was giving me while I was stacking food on my plate.
He smiled, remembering the way her eyes lit up as the grand buffet was unveiled.
You know, I was meaning to ask you, how did you know to stack the food like that? You had at least twice as much food on there than Smash did, but his plate was all wobbly from the food. Well, let's just say I have a lot of buffet experience.
The evening had started hours ago, and there was a lot of pomp and dignity to the whole affair that Chesney had found exceptionally boring. Being seated at the very center of the head of the front table made it so he and Medea had to smile like fools for hours, and once the actual banquet began, they were glad of it, and basically the first in line for the food. As far as he was concerned, he'd done his job, and the world could sort itself out now however it wanted. Well, that's not true. He would be especially cross if someone messed it all up after they'd just saved it. But for now, his brain was in full-on vacation mode, and all he could think about was going away and finding someplace to relax.
I can't wait to get out of here, actually.
He sighed. He was so tired of the obligations, checking in with all the projects and people, and even visiting the doctors. He just wanted some real freedom. She tilted her head at him.
Oh, don't want to soak up any more free food and drinks? Or maybe sign a few more autographs, Mr. Hero?
She exaggeratedly swooned and collapsed into his arms. He groaned. The walk up to the floating temple had been swamped with looky-loos. A whole gaggle of girls practically surrounded him, giggling and swooning over him, trying to get autographs or really anything else they could get out of him. Chesney could tell that Medea, while looking for all the world as a peaceful and smiling goddess, was seething underneath, so he did his best to disperse them, and avoid any more delays. For the sake of their own lives.
You know, the same thing is going to happen to you, and I will tease you about it mercilessly. You mean I will also have people asking to have my baby? That will be quite the feat.
He groaned again. It wasn't even his fault, and he wasn't going to live this down for days. It was then that a very old friend happened upon them. Medea was the first to see him.
Fritz,
she announced, smiling broadly and walking over to give him a hug. Fritz, the Lubot who had helped Chechny rescue her, not to mention a semi-permanent resident of Ratzurk, was one of her favorite people.
Oh, I'm so happy you could make it. Of course. I wouldn't miss this for anything.
He squeezed her back and shook Chechny's hand firmly.
Goodness, it's amazing to see you both alive and well. Took me some time to get back on my feet, but since then I've been so worried about you. Sorry about your cabin.
Chechny apologized again lamely, for being at least partly responsible for the destruction of the man's home.
Oh, Pa, don't even mention it. It was a small price to pay to rescue this one,
he said, gesturing to Medea. As it was, the gesture brought something to her attention.
Fritz, is that what I think it is?
She cooed, pointing to a ring on his hand. That made the man blush.
Yeah. I got married just a little while ago. Miss Shao is particularly persuasive. She just barged into the island and wouldn't leave until I acknowledged the tension between us. And well, bam!
He laughed, unable to contain his excitement.
Sorry she couldn't be here too. You two should drop by the cabin sometime. We've always got something good cooking, believe me. Well, I'll add it to the list.
Chechny added good-naturedly. At Fritz's raised eyebrow, Chechny explained.
Oh, we both made up a list of things we wanted to do, now that we were finished our adventure. Yes.
Medea nodded and grinned.
A month at a beachside resort was my first pick. The list is pretty long, though. I imagine it will take us almost a year to do it all. Whoa, that's some vacation. But if anybody deserves it, it's you two.
He looked around self-consciously.
Look, I should probably run. Plus I think I've stolen enough of you two lovebirds' time. Don't forget me, okay? We'll never forget you, Fritz. Stay safe,
she said, watching him wave back and nod politely to a few other guests as he left.
Oh, I bet those two are so cute together. I really do hope we can take the time to visit them. Already on the list,
Chechny said, patting his inner breast pocket where a small notebook was kept.
Well, I suppose we should make one last round and say hi to everyone. Yeah,
she agreed, looking wistfully one last moment down at the festivities below in Jerain.
Come on,
she said, taking his arm in hers.
My glass is empty anyway.
Perhaps they still weren't exactly drinking age, but there wasn't a waiter in the place that would deny Chechny, the Great, and Medea, the Wise, another glass of wine. Not too long into walking through the party, they happened upon a pair of familiar squirrel. It was Peppy and Tiger. Chechny wasn't exactly sure how Peppy had gotten in here, but he wasn't going to make a big fuss about it.
Oh, you two. My friend Tiger was telling me about how you saved our camp,
Peppy said, smiling to them both and shaking their hands. Tiger looked a little nervous in the crowd. The son of the elder bowed to them robotically.
My father wishes me to thank you both again. Thanks to you, we recovered almost every lost bird and our livelihoods were saved. I noticed a while back the camp was gone. Did you all move it?
Chechny asked, mostly ignoring Peppy.
Oh, yes. Once we had noticed the dire situation in Nesquat, we retreated to a special location for our tribe that we may flee to in difficult times.
Medea gave Tiger a hug, which made the man stiffen in embarrassment.
It's great to see you so healthy. And how is that little rascal Spade?
Tiger coughed.
Ah, yes, Spade. He is, how it is said, still a bastard.
Medea barked a laugh, perhaps a bit louder than she had meant to, and then they made their farewells and moved on. Once they were out of sight, her expression darkened and she said,
Who the hell let that guy Peppy in here?
Well, At least she hadn't said anything tactless to the man's face. It wasn't too long until they found a group of Gotham talking in a corner, their voices like gravel. And with them were Gorf and Smash. Both of them, Chesney especially, had felt a great deal of sympathy for Smash, despite the deadly trouble appeasing him had landed them in. And Gorf had been a servant of Smash that gladly took up the task of escorting them to Jerain. Upon seeing Chesney, Smash's eyes lit up, and came over and hugged Chesney firmly. Perhaps too firmly, as it felt like being hugged by a sack of rocks.
"Ooh, yeah, wee babes, I've worried myself sick over ya."
He came over to Medea and hugged her slightly more delicately.
"Oh, I can't believe what a rotten mess I was back then, and I put you two in danger all for that silly lullaby. Can you ever forgive me?" "Hey, it's all in the past. And it was not silly. It was meaningful. Of course I empathized with you."
Chesney replied reassuringly.
"How is Hagu doing?" "Great, actually, though there were a few scares after you left."
Gorf chimed in.
"I've even opened up another set of tunnels for mining, and struck out on my own. I figured after seeing you two striking out like you were, what excuse did I have for not following my dreams? Though of course I'll always be thankful to you, boss,"
he said, nodding deferentially to Smash.
"Oh, come off it, you can't be calling me boss anymore, you lunk,"
Smash said in his gruff sort of way, but it was obvious to everyone how proud he was of Gorf. They all shared a toast to Hagudo and to Gorf's new business, and the children left to find more folks.
"Woo, a few more toasts like that, and I think I'll need to sit down,"
Medea said, giggling. Chesney rattled his glass.
"Yeah, this stuff goes down way too easy. Let's go over there for a minute,"
he said, pointing off to a small unoccupied table by the window. They walked over and sat down, again looking out over the evening light of Jerain below them.
"Is it bad that I kinda just want to stay here and play cards?"
he said, laughing quietly. She let out a breath.
"Oh, I'm with you, but I think it would probably be rather rude. Mind if I join you for a moment?"
They jumped, surprised by the arrival of someone, and turned to find it was Jerain, the man that had joined them in Jerain along with Dan, and traveled with them to Dobor. Medea let out a nervous laugh.
"Oh, Zoran, you scared the daylights out of me. Yes, please. How have you been?"
The man was smiling, but he always had that air of cool collectedness to him that never seemed to leave. Even now, Chesney could see him keeping an eye on the exits to the room, and the people walking about.
"I've been just great. Traveling with you two really was an experience I cherish. It taught me that I still had a ways to go if I wanted to call myself strong, and also what it means to trust in others. I appreciate you two teaching me that. It's incredible what you two accomplished. Make sure you don't let all these old serious types try to boss you two around, eh?"
Chesney nodded knowingly.
"Oh yes, they've already tried."
He looked to Medea, who winked back.
"Thankfully, we're both pretty stubborn. It will be a while before we really want to get involved with much of anything else, I think." "Good. You two deserve a chance to just be kids. Hold on to that as long as you can."
With those words, Zoran got up from his chair, nodded to them both, and walked away into the crowd.
"See, he gets it,"
Medea haughtily agreed.
"We did our bit. Time for us to just go be us." "Oh, come on, it's not like I was volunteering us left and right." "Even so, just don't forget. There will be no shortage of people trying to get us to solve their problems for them. We get to pick what we care about." Yeah, you're awful bossy for someone who was worried about being a nag,"
Chesney retorted, smirking.
"You cheeky,
Medea growled incensed, trying to slap Chesney's hand from across the table. He got up and darted out of the way, and she chased him as they dodged between partygoers and dignitaries.
"Oof,"
said a man's voice that Chesney accidentally backed into.
Well, if it isn't the heroes of the hour."
They both turned sheepishly, and a little red-faced, to see Dan there, along with Gunny and Chen. Dan was dressed in an even more splendid-looking silky martial arts uniform. Gunny was still wearing his resistance fatigues, but Chen had managed to get some normal-looking clothes after his confinement.
"Heroes of the century, more like,"
laughed Gunny.
Agreed, these two really are something special,
Chen added.
We were all talking about a recent martial arts tournament we were planning to attend. Oh really? When is it?
Chesney asked, suddenly quite interested. He wasn't exactly a martial artist, so maybe participating was off the table, but this sounded like a hoot.
Oh, about 2 weeks from now, in Lagan,
Dan answered.
It would be amazing if you came and saw it.
Chesney was already scribbling it into his notes.
Oh, I wouldn't miss it, he says without even asking me. Oh great, more sweaty men hitting each other, just what I want on my vacation.
She chided lightly, watching him.
Oh, you didn't want to compete?
He asked, looking up at her.
You always seem to be more of a martial artist than me. Well, maybe, haha.
She blushed.
I mean, we'll be in Lagan anyway, after all.
She cleared her throat, then asked,
And how are you getting along, Chen? Oh, I'm still trying to find some of my relatives. Sasquatch is a bit of a mess, but the resistance is really stepping up. Oh, missing persons? That's actually my area.
Gunny added. He took out a notepad.
Give me the details, and I'll get someone on it.
They took turns hugging and saying goodbye, and then moved on. Chesney had a pleased smile on his face.
It's so good to see everyone again. It reminds me that Lennis was a lot better off than I was worried it was. I know what you mean. Plus, seeing events starting up, and people from Nasquat and Nasquat talking together like that, it really makes me hopeful for the future.
It was then that Medea gasped, and then pointed, looking furious.
That bastard! Who let him in here?
Before Chesney could even react, she was already stomping away. Chesney hurried after her, eventually seeing that it was Destry, talking animatedly with Slayer. Oh crap, what is she going to do? Perhaps sensing the immediate danger to his life, Destry turned to see Medea stomping over, and put up his hands in a placating gesture, and backing up.
And now, Medea, hold on, I can explain. I came to apologize.
Slayer looked completely aghast, standing paralyzed like he had no idea what to do. Chesney caught up and patted him on the shoulder. He knew there was no use getting in the middle of this situation. Medea stomped up to Destry, pushed a finger into his chest, and got right up into his face.
Give me one good reason I shouldn't just open up a window and throw you out,
she hissed.
Look, I know I was a bit of a bastard,
he said, smiling sheepishly and glancing over to Slayer like he was looking for a lifeline.
Slayer here let everyone know what I'd done when he got back to Dober, and let's just say it was an educating experience. But I turned a new leaf. I'm a legitimate businessman now. So you used the money you stole from a couple of children, start a new business for yourself, and you want me to what? Pat you on the back.
Destry winced.
Well, no, of course not. I just wanted to try to make things right. So here, all your money back, plus interest. I'm a moneylender now, and if you ever need money fast, I'm your guy.
He handed over a pouch of gold, and Medea eyed it coldly. When she took it, she said,
We didn't need it now. We needed it then, when we were 2 little kids out in the world all alone.
She pushed his chest with her finger again.
But if you want bygones to be bygones, fine in. One day I'm going to walk into your little shop and ask a big favor from you, and you're going to do it, understand? Yes, ma'am.
Medea smiled sweetly.
Good.
Then her expression shifted.
Now get out, both of you.
Destry was all too happy to get out of there after that exchange. Slayer followed along a little forlornly, but Chesney gave him a small wave, and nod as farewell.
Well, that was a little exciting.
Medea simply huffed.
He's lucky I didn't do worse to him. Come on, I need more dessert now after that.
Well, he certainly wasn't going to say no to more dessert. While Medea danced around the dessert table with a little plate, Chesney happened to see another familiar face.
Hey! Wild! It's amazing to see you. How are you?
he said, smiling broadly and waving her over. Wild apparently was also headed to the dessert table for seconds, and the two girls had a laugh about the coincidence. The Sano woman was decked out in a form-fitting green silk dress with lots of little frills and golden high heels.
"Oh man, I'm so happy to see you two again,"
she sighed, giving them both big hugs.
"I know you said it was okay and everything for me to leave, and I was so thankful to be back with Gramps again. But wow, I missed you two so much as soon as I left." "Oh my goodness, you look amazing in that dress,"
Medea said, assessing her outfit.
"Where did you get it?"
The two girls went on like that for a while, but Chesney couldn't bring himself to completely pay attention to it. He only noticed he probably should have been when they both looked at him conspiratorially, and Medea seemed a bit cross. Uh-oh. Clearing his throat, he decided to change the subject.
"Oh right, I was wondering, how's the whole tourist scene in Lagan now that Dragon Mountain is gone?"
Her eyebrows shot up, and she grinned slyly.
"Haha, amazingly well, all things considered. I mean, they just so happened to have a tour guide who was there for the whole debacle, plus fought alongside the two heroes of Lennis, so we shifted the whole angle a little. Now we have a slightly altered tour where we visit the Dragon Mountain site, which we now build up to be sort of an amusement area. And then we also go visit the site of Cormu and Sophie's cottage." "Oh, is there anything left there?"
Medea wondered, interested.
"I didn't even think to go back and check."
Wild waved the question away.
"No, it's pretty much all disappeared, but we managed to get Joanne to provide some details, and put up a recreation, and sort of made it into a small museum. You two totally have to come see it."
Chesney grimaced. His memories of that cabin were a little complicated.
"Well, we'll see,"
he offered eventually. Not skipping a beat at all, Wild pulled them both close, and whispered conspiratorially.
"Oh, right. Remember that total wacko woman who chased after us? Look over there."
They both looked over to see the purple-haired Laffery woman sitting with a Sano man, looking at each other dreamily.
"Yeah, looks like she somehow found a guy that was into crazy chicks. I think they're like just married? Or maybe just about to. I don't know. I honestly tried to get myself out of the conversation as soon as possible." "Huh,"
Chesney said, then shrugged.
"Well, I guess I'm happy for her. Oh, I'm sure it won't be too long until I hear good news about you two, Lovebird."
Wild teased, and when they both blushed, she cackled in delight.
"Oh, you two are too fun."
She leaned into Chesney and whispered,
"Seriously, bro, do not screw this thing up you have going on."
Then she leaned in and whispered something to Medea. Then, at last, she sneakily grabbed the last greenberry tart from Medea's tall stack, and laughed giggly as she danced away.
"Don't be strangers." "Where does she get her energy?"
Chesney said, trying not to blush about all the relationship talk.
Yeah, tell me about it."
Medea agreed, also looking a little flustered.
"Lion is going to have to close down completely when she decides to quit. Assuming she doesn't straight up own the place soon,"
he joked. As they stuffed their faces and continued walking around, waving at people they sort of knew, they happened upon Fastjo and Luliette talking together excitedly. Luliette had a fat journal in her hands with little notes coming out of all the edges of the pages, and she was scribbling furiously. Chesney walked up and said,
"Well, I wasn't expecting you two to find each other." "Ah, Chesney. How amazing to see you again. Yes, Luliette here was just asking me about my time at your side for the journey. I believe she's writing a book."
Luliette nodded, still scribbling.
"I'm trying to get everyone's accounts while they're still fresh. The people up in Nasquat were easy to track down, but the Esquat ones are way harder. This is my best shot at getting them all." "Oh, who have you talked to so far?"
Medea asked, through a partially full mouth.
Well, Fastjo and Chen. Chen was pretty quick, but he filled me in a bit on Zagos' prison. I still need to find Chikanen, and Lily promised to talk to me next." "So, when can we expect you to be after us?"
Chesney asked, joking, but at the same time knowing it wasn't really a joke if it was true.
"Oh, whenever you two have the time."
She slammed her book closed, and her eyes were at once pleading and starstruck.
Seriously, any time. I will drop anything and everything. I've been trying to get everything else out of the way so I could get really detailed accounts from you both.
Chesney looked at Medea, who rolled her eyes and took out a different notepad, one they had dubbed the naughty list, which they were using to keep track of all the things they had to do after their vacation.
All right, I'll scribble in some time for you.
A lot of it was pretty obvious. Checking in on Sasquatch's new government, making sure all the work camps were liberated. Then, of course, meeting up with Piaz for a much more thorough understanding of the problems facing Linus now. Chesney specifically wanted to make sure there was absolutely no more records on Gabnid's invincibility field, or material, and Dahlgren's construction, while Medea wanted to set aside some time to completely destroy the Black Tower in Charon. Meeting up with Lululiet would be a breath of fresh air in comparison.
So, how are things in Sasquatch now for your troop?
Chesney asked. Fastjo made a so-so gesture.
It is much better than it was, but still, a long way to go. That is just how people are.
That's when Medea got a thought and grabbed Chesney's arm.
Oh, that's right. Adding going to visit Fastjo. I want his help with my songs and stuff.
At Fastjo's raised eyebrow, she elaborated.
I know Lululiet is planning on writing a book about all this, but I also wanted to have our experience in our own words, you know. But it's a lot harder to write good music than I thought. I'd love it if you or someone else in your troupe could help me. Are you serious? We'd love to. Whatever time you want, we will make time for you.
Chesney smiled, watching Medea's beaming face as he scribbled it down too. Soon they left the two of them to their discussion of accounts. Medea handed Chesney her plate.
You need to take these away from me, or I'm going to explode out of this dress in a chocolate supernova. You know, that's a darn shame. These pants are really quite comfortable. I could eat all this and still have room.
Chesney said easily, popping more of the delectable treats in his mouth.
I will tell on you to your mother. I know she will side with me. Whoa, now, let's not start dragging parents into this. Maybe I should tell your dad about that time you went to a strip club. What? That's not even remotely what that was.
They were interrupted by some laughter, which startled them and made them jump a little bit. Maybe the drinks really were making them especially careless. The laughter came from Grunt and his partner Wind, whom they'd rescued from Conchito together.
You know, it's easy to forget you two are just kids, until you argue like that.
Guffawed Grunt, while Wind just smiled knowingly. He couldn't even remember if they were married or just together, and decided it wasn't really important to ask.
Yeah.
Chesney waved away their laughter.
I know who I'm dumping a bunch of work on next time I come by Sasquatch. How is the disarmament going?
Grunt grunted and shrugged his shoulder.
Oh, about as well as could be expected, I suppose. Lots of folks there still sympathize with Zagos, even if they don't say it out loud. As for electing a new political leader, I'm not sure if that's even going to happen. Zagos unified all the city-states, and without him they might just break up again. That's a shame,
Medea said.
Everything else aside, Sasquatch was really advanced. It would be a shame if all that knowledge and talent was squandered. That's what I keep telling them. We'll see how it goes.
He suddenly snapped his fingers and started digging around in his jacket.
Oh, right, I was supposed to give you two this letter. It's from Fiery.
That got their attention. Medea practically snatched it out of Grunt's hand.
Fiery? Really? She's alive.
She couldn't hide her excitement and stood close to Chesney so they could read the letter together. Hey, twerps, sorry I couldn't be there, but these great ones be damned quacks looking after me said I still can't get out of bed yet. Trust me though, I gave as good as I got after you escaped. After you defeated Zagos, I was broken out of his personal little jail. Sadly, I wasn't in any shape to try and escape myself like you two did. So thanks for saving the world. You really saved my bacon out there. Tell that jerkwad Grunt to bring me back some dessert or he'll wind up next to me in the hospital. Love, Fiery. P. S.F. Thanks for avenging my brother. I can never repay you. Truly. Stay safe, you two.
Well, she certainly sounds lively.
Medea said, letting a bit of giggle get through.
And it looks like you need to get her some dessert.
He sighed.
Lively is right. You didn't see the massive temper tantrum she threw when they said she had to stay in bed. And I don't know how she expects me to get it to her before it goes bad. And please don't take offense to this, but why does Nasquat food taste so bad?
Wynne gasped in astonishment, and Fo slapped her partner's arm.
Grunt. You can't say things like that. Your taste buds are just trash because all you've eaten was ration.
Wynne turned to them, placatingly.
Don't listen to him, it's all been lovely. Mostly.
At that, Wynne seemed to remember something.
Oh, that's right, one more thing. Did you know they let that awful woman chill in here?
That was like a cold splash of water to Chesney. He would never be able to forget that absolutely callous woman from Consciuto as she gleefully hucked rotten food at Wynne right in front of him. He honestly couldn't believe she was still alive after the massacre at Consciuto. Some bastards have all the luck, it seems.
Where is she?
He asked coldly. Wynne smiled a little wickedly.
Oh, don't worry. I had her tossed right out. The look on her face when she saw it was me. Priceless. Good.
He relaxed a little. Whoever had been in charge of inviting their friends had really dropped the ball.
Oh, there you two are. I've been trying to find you for almost an hour.
Surprised at being accosted again, they turned to see Zaran, the man who had talked to them outside of Joyce's bakery, and who had eventually begun a short-lived relationship with her prior to her death, and now had taken up her bakery. He was covered in flour and had a pink apron tied around him. Grunt and Wynne took their leave, and so the children turned to Zaran and gave him firm hugs.
Oh, it's really great to see you,
Medea said.
You too,
he said, and opened up a basket he had been carrying.
I made up a special batch of the Kiowa bread just so I could get it to you. The caterers were kind enough to let me use one of the ovens downstairs just so I could make it fresh.
The smell of the familiar bread hit Chesney like a wave. When he took a piece of bread, it was still warm, and closing his eyes made him feel like he was almost back there in that bakery, standing before Joyce. Beside him, Medea sniffed in sadness, memory, and gratitude.
Aye. Wow. I didn't think it could still hurt so much, even after all this time, but it does. I knew her for such a short time, but she made us feel welcome for the first time in Sasquatch. I'll never forget her for that. I know what you mean,
Zaran replied.
We fell in love so fast, and then it was just gone, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know she was in the resistance until after. But the one thing she made me understand was that loving people was the key to happiness. It was the most important thing. So I try to express that in the same way she did, and I feel connected to her like that. I just wanted to come here and thank you both for helping me understand that. I swear, we'll come and visit whenever we can,
Chesney said, utterly touched by how earnest this man's love turned out to be. They may not have had a lot in common, but they had Joyce, and that was enough.
Yeah,
Medea added, wiping at her eyes.
Thank you so much, Zaran. This really means a lot.
The man just smiled warmly.
Yeah, you're going to make me blush. You're both welcome any time. Eat it up while it's still warm. I swear you'll feel happy,
he said, winking and waving at them as he went on his way. They started eating, and it was like feeling home again.
This is still the best thing I've ever eaten, I think,
Chesney said.
Yeah, I think so too.
Medea's voice was tight. After that, they needed a bit of time to themselves, so they found about the darkest corner they could find to sort out their feelings. They spent time whispering the things they remembered about her.
Yes, she was an amazing, vibrant woman,
said a voice from nowhere. They both jumped, looking all over, trying to see who had spoken. Then, from the shadows, another familiar face emerged.
Bean, you're okay.
Medea gasped, completely at a loss of what else to say. How in all of Lennis had the spectral being gotten all the way here? When last they had seen him, he was a shadow of his former self, and they thought he'd simply faded away.
Oh yes. Do not worry about me.
The ghost said as its form wavered into and out of vision.
I just came by to say that, now that all of this is over, and I feel my spirit is well and truly free. Thank you both for letting me experience what it was like to feel alive, and to fight for a worthy cause again. May you live forever.
And then slowly, the wavering form of being began to dissolve into pale, peaceful-looking light. The shadow that had fallen over this part of the room disappeared. Neither of them knew what to say for almost a minute.
Well,
Chesney said at last.
I'm glad he found peace in the end. I hope the rest of those lost souls can pass on too.
Medea could only nod somberly, and they decided they should probably rejoin the festivities, as things were starting to get late. In time, they came to find Chakan and the rest of brothers talking quietly among themselves. Chakan had come with them to the temple of Zagos, escaping with Lily, and the Rasov brothers had been 2 Rakgorn mercenaries that they had decided to pass up, since the little brother had looked completely out of his element.
Hey, Chakan. I wanted to say thank you for getting Lily out of there.
Chesney offered, shaking the older Doru man's hand.
That turned out to be a critical move in the course of the conflict. I have no doubt you're aware of.
The old man smirked and raised his eyebrows very slightly.
Oh, I know. She was sure to remind me of that when I saw her earlier. And you, too?
Medea said, addressing the brothers.
You certainly look like you got stronger, didn't you?
The younger brother, G, nodded.
Oh yeah, after you left, the Resistance hired us for some big work camp breakouts. It was pretty tough. I learned a ton. Are they all cleared out now?
J nodded.
Oh yeah, every last one has been found and freed. You can be sure of that. Speaking of Lily, where is she anyway? I haven't seen her at all.
Chesney asked, thinking back to the whole party. Chicken considered.
Looking for you, I think. I bet you both have just been going in circles missing each other this whole time. Sounds like her luck. Anyway, see you kids around. Good work out there, you sure taught me a lesson in appearances. Now you're making us mercs look bad.
He laughed, finally letting his seriousness slip. After that, they decided to throw Lily a bone and ask around till they found her. She was found eventually, talking animatedly to a group of young Fi-Orla and Lafri men. She seemed pretty pleased with herself, and wearing a white dress with sleeves but bare shoulders.
Don't believe her lies.
Chesney joked as they walked up.
Maybe like 67% of what she told you is true. I'd say more like 50%.
Medea smirked knowingly. Lily, though, practically jumped for joy when she saw them.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
She practically ran over and tackled them with a huge hug.
Oh, I've missed you so much.
Then she turned to the guys.
Don't listen to them. All my stories were 110% accurate. I'll be back sometime.
Then hugged them both again and led them away, seemingly intent on joining them for a while.
Tell me everything. Haha, what's there to tell? Just boring housekeeping stuff, really.
Chesney said, shrugging.
Yeah, we've been doing nothing but running errands for a month and a half. Well, plus the doctor visits.
Medea agreed. She unconsciously touched her chest where the large scar they had gotten from Lokiarn stubbornly refused to fade. Lily rolled her eyes.
She says, after she basically scared the crap out of a huge crowd of people flying on a ship, causing a lightning storm. I talked to a few ex-soldiers. Apparently you were terrifying.
It was Medea's turn to nervously scratch the back of her head and laugh shyly.
Well, I didn't want there to be any ambiguity. The war was over. Well, the point was definitely gotten across. I'm just thankful we didn't have to break out the creepy Chesney powers at the end there,
she said, shuddering. It took him a moment to figure out what she meant.
Oh, you mean what happened when I was scaring Zagos?
He looked to them both, who nodded and looked equally uncomfortable. Perhaps he had gone a little overboard. All the more reason he had vowed to never use it again.
I'm sorry I scared you guys too. Don't worry. No matter what, you'll never see that again. Anyway, what have you been doing since then?
Lily clapped her hands excitedly.
Oh, I didn't tell you guys yet, did I? I have found my mom.
She practically screamed in joy. They were both taken by surprise.
Really? Lily, that's amazing news. How did you find her?
Midia joined in her exuberance and grabbed Lily's hands.
Hee. It turns out that she had been one of Zagos's major researchers on Reagan technology. She knew so many secrets, they basically kept her locked up permanently. After the fall of Zagos and the war was declared over, Grunt made sure to release all the political prisoners, and my mom was among them.
Chesney thought.
I wonder if she was up in one of those towers near Neugrin. Remember when we got the armor? Oh, right.
Midia exclaimed.
They basically just gave it to us and begged us to destroy Neugrin, right? Wow, small world if she was there.
She turned back to Lily and asked,
I don't suppose you found your father too?
Lily shook her head.
No. I did get an official record of his sorties. He was killed in an altercation with the Resistance. I don't blame them though. I mean, everyone was fighting for their own reasons. I just thank my lucky stars that I have Mom back. That's more than I could have ever hoped for. And thanks to you two, I get a lot of mercenary work now, so I'm supporting us for now while we figure out what to do next. Oh, and what does your mom think of your mercenary work?
Chesney asked. Lily barked out a laugh.
Oh, so, not a fan. But whatever, it puts food on the table, and I can charge out the nose for easy work too. Ha ha, but it's really nice to be fussed over again, you know. Ha, true. My dad still treats me like his little girl, but I wouldn't give it up for anything. I'm so thankful he's okay.
Midia agreed, sighing. Meanwhile, Chesney was considering that he now had a connection to someone who was intimately connected to Zagos's research. She might be valuable in the near future when they needed to start seriously cleaning up the left-over Reagan technology. He made a mental note to speak to PS and Notice about it later. When he turned back to the conversation between the two girls, Lily was just saying her goodbyes. She looked a little flushed as she mentioned she had to get back to the gaggle of guys who had been fawning over her. They knowingly waved her off and let her have her fun.
Heh, it was like she was made to be famous,
Midia said.
I'd say that I hope she doesn't let it go to her head, but I think we all know there's no stopping that.
After that, they were feeling a little thirsty again, so they wandered over to the drink table, where they found Blades hitting on the Doru bartender.
Chesney, Midia. So good to see you. This is Allegria, by the way,
he said, magnanimously introducing his conversation partner, who waved at them sheepishly.
I was just telling her about our fun little trip to Zagos's temple.
He turned to them and shook their hands.
Amazing to see you both, really it is. I'm glad you're okay too, Blades,
Midia offered with a nod.
I was always curious what happened to you after we got separated.
Blades took on an exaggerated expression.
Well, it was an experience, let me tell you. Of course, when I realized we'd gotten separated, I was beside myself with worry. And I don't even want to tell you where I ended up getting deposited from the Shuta. But I spent a good amount of time fighting my way through Zagos's forces looking for you both. Fiery too. But eventually I was forced to retreat when Zagos fully regained control. Nothing else for it, I spent some time trying to get in touch with the Resistance to find out if they had any news. Nobody had any. I'd truly given all three of you up as a lost cause, until your dramatic re-entrance announcing an end to Zagos, and the end to the war. So, what did happen to you after that? Well, long story short, we landed, barely alive, at Neugrin space, and gained access to a secret facility built by Gabnid. We learned more about the Great Ones, and found a passage that led us back to Nasquat. And a lot of complicated things happened, but we got the power to destroy Dalgran and a ship, and rushed over to do just that.
Blades chuckled.
I imagine those bits you skipped over were pretty incredible. I'd love to hear about it when you have more time. You bet. So, what are you doing now?
Chesney asked.
Well,
he said, smiling roguishly and turning to the bartender.
I was just trying to convince the beautiful young lady here to come along on a bit of an adventure.
The bartender was blushing, and looked a bit starstruck at them all, as she fumbled to refill Chesney's and Midia's drinks.
Well, good luck with that,
Chesney said, then shook Allegria's hand.
Well, miss, you should know he is particularly reliable. Have a great evening.
And they were off again.
Well, nice of you to offer a hand there, Chesney. Though with how handsome Blades is, I doubt he needs it.
His face felt flushed, and he couldn't help but grin.
Well, I guess I was just in a good mood.
It was getting to be rather late, and they were both ready to go, but decided since they had already met most of the people they'd met on their journey, decided to actively seek out the last few people they could.
It's a shame Nails couldn't be here,
Chesney said.
Can you imagine everyone's reaction?
Midia shook her head.
I do not want to imagine that. Considering it almost vaporized Mouth, just for being a bit of a pest, I can't imagine trying to make sure it didn't do anything drastic at the drop of a hat. Good point. I'm a bit sad Joanne didn't make it either. Oh hey, there's Mouth.
He pointed over to a table where Mouth was conversing with Piaz, as well as their parents so.
Oh wow, all of them together? I can understand Piaz, but I would have thought their conversation would go a bit over Dad's head. If I were a betting man, I'd put money on my mother using Mouth to nose in on what happened. You should have seen how many times I caught her checking up on me with the others in the village. You'd think I was some kind of serial prankster or something.
She raised an eyebrow at him.
Well, were you? Well, yes, but I was really good at hiding it, and she never found out about most of them. So her reaction was completely unjustified.
They found 2 chairs and sat among them, earning some fawning attention from their respective parents. Each of them were perhaps a little more emotional than was strictly necessary. While Mayor Malspar hugged and talked quietly with Midia, his mother Neri crushed him in a hug and showered him with kisses.
Mom, please, this is embarrassing.
He sighed, but smiled all the same.
Oh, you heartless boy.
She whined.
You run off into danger and then get mad at me when I worry about you, as if that's not a normal reaction.
He endured her talking over him and how handsome he looked in his formal attire, until at last he could get a word in edgewise.
So what were you all talking about?
He asked as Neri and Malspar sat down again. Chesney could tell Midia was mildly annoyed at being pampered like that, but outwardly she was the same as ever. They each subtly looked at the other as if to say, "What can you do?" Mouth was the first to answer.
Oh well, P.S. has been kind enough to spend much of his time filling me in on some things I had questions about, when your parents decided to join us.
P.S. joined in then.
And may I say again how thankful I am that the children were raised by such lovely and thoughtful people. In all honesty, seeing them grow at your hands has certainly been an eye-opening experience for me. Oh, why?
Midia couldn't help but ask.
Well, back on Rega, as you know, children have not been born in a very, very long time, even before the artificial sleep. I was just ruminating on why that was, and I've come to the conclusion that it's a difference of how we raise our children. I won't really go into specifics, but I think overall as a species we placed a little too much emphasis on productivity, that I think we lost a little something of vitality along the way.
Most of that went over his head like much of what the ancient Reagan said, but he nodded along anyway.
I think that means you two did a bang-up job,
he said eventually, smiling at his mother and nodding respectfully to Malspar. P.S. laughed.
Yes, quite right. And what have you been doing since, Mouth?
Midia asked, eager to change the subject.
Not as much as I'd like, to tell you the truth. I got a bit nostalgic for home. After that, I found all sorts of reasons to stay. But I'm finally back to doing what I do best, exploring ruins. And thankfully for me, Piaz is happy to help me in that endeavor.
Piaz nodded.
Yes, I believe it's high time we cleaned up the planet and moved on from there. I'm hoping you two will help with that too,
he said, looking to them both.
Already on my to-do list,
Chesney informed him.
Though don't expect much for a while.
He looked over at Midia, who blushed, and they couldn't stifle their giggles.
We're going on a big vacation first. Ah, so you truly do not intend to return to the village?
Malspar asked, a little forlornly. Medea's face turned a little pained.
Well, eventually. Yeah, but it's okay. Forgive a selfish old man. I know I should have let you find your own way a long time ago. Just remember, I'll always be your father, and you'll always have a home in Ratsurt.
Her mouth twisted into something squirmy, and she stood up to go and hug him.
Thanks, Dad.
Meanwhile, Neri leveled a stern glare in his direction, with an added wagging finger.
And you, young man, you make sure you keep that young lady safe. It's a lot of responsibility, you know. And I don't want to hear you causing her any trouble.
She talks like the girl couldn't literally take on an army by herself.
Yes, Ma, I know.
He sighed, rolling his eyes. You would think saving the world would make him exempt from such lectures, but apparently not.
Say, has anyone seen Daphne?
Mouth nodded.
Oh yes, actually. Last I saw her, she had cornered Hawk shortly after the speeches ended.
Medea came back to him, and pulled him out of his chair.
Oh, this I have to see. Come on, if we're lucky she's still at it.
As he stood, Neri also stood and came over to give Medea a hug.
And you, thank you so much for watching over my son. Always remember, my home is your home too. Okay?
Medea's face was flushed again, and she still acted like the nervous little girl when speaking to his mother, and bowed respectfully.
Oh, of course, ma'am. And thank you.
After that, she practically yanked Chesney away.
Why can I not act normal when she's around? I always feel like I might do the wrong thing.
She whined.
Are you kidding?
He scoffed.
She loves you. I'm sure she forgets I'm even there half the time when you show up. I'm absolutely certain if we got into an argument, she would take your side. I will have to remember that. Why did I say that?
Just as they'd hoped, they managed to find the final pair of people. Just off to the side of the head table, Daphne was talking sourly to Hawk, who looked particularly deflated. Once he spied them heading their way, he visibly brightened.
Oh, I finally get to speak with you,
he said breathlessly and rushed over to shake their hands. Daphne crossed her arms and watched, but stood by silently.
I wanted to share my congratulations, as well as my sincere apologies for what happened between us.
Medea sighed.
I'm sorry, too. I shouldn't have gotten so upset with you. I know what Dahlgren's influence did to people. I was blaming you for something outside your control. I was just so angry and scared, and you were the person I could blame. So I'm sorry.
Hawk smiled sincerely.
It really warms my heart to hear that. Still, after you left, I took what you said to heart. I found out from Miss Shaw what had been transpiring, and I took off into the wilds to look for any survivors.
That made them raise their eyebrows in surprise.
Really? I didn't know that. And so, all those people that returned, they didn't come back on their own? I can't say all of them were my doing, but I did find some rattled and senseless folks out in the open, and I got them home safely.
Medea looked rather touched.
Hawk, I don't know what to say.
She hugged him.
Thank you. I won't forget it. And thank you for forgiving me.
Hawk then turned to Chesney.
I hope you can come to forgive my behavior as well someday.
Chesney reached out his hand.
It's water under the bridge. Besides, it was Peppy that was the real asshole. I always remembered your advice.
Hawk gratefully took the hand.
Yes, he can be a bit of a handful. And thank you. I really did mean it. Yes, get all your hugs and what have you out of the way. I still need you over here, mister.
Daphne sighed, arms crossed. Well, at least I know she's a hag to everyone and not just me.
Oh, what are you two talking about?
Chesney could not help but ask, curious what the old woman could possibly be wanting with the famous mercenary. Hawk seemed to cringe and grimace all at once.
Yes, well, she was educating me on just how poor some of my recent decisions were, and offering me a job in the same breath. Yeah, she's a demanding one.
Chesney replied without shame of Daphne hearing him, which made Medea suppress a laugh with a smirk.
So, what's the job? Well, there's more to saving the world than just going all over the place and hitting the bad guys, young man.
Daphne huffed.
There's a lot of pieces to pick up and loose ends to tie together.
He wondered what else could really need doing that wasn't already on his other to-do list, but he found that he wasn't really in the mood to find out Honch.
Well, I will say you're still very energetic for your age, ma'am,
Medea said diplomatically, which actually got a laugh out of the old woman.
Ha, you cheeky thing. You can bet your bonnet I have a lot left in me still. Can't be letting the younger generations have all the fun.
At that, her face melted a little into sincere pride.
Oh, ignore me, carrying on. I couldn't be more proud of you two,
Daphne said and came forward to give them each a hug, which surprised them greatly.
I really am sorry so much fell to you two. I know at times it felt like I was leaving everything to you, but there was a lot of work behind the scenes that made all of what you two did possible, and I tried to get it all done in time for you to need it. Now, go on and get gone, you two. Leave the easy part to the rest of us Lanusians. You two deserve the rest and more.
That actually got to him just a little. He cleared his throat and said,
Hey, we may be Regan, but we're still Lanusians too. And thanks, Daphne. You take care.
He couldn't help but get one little jab in, though, for old time's sake.
I really don't want to have to take on the mysterious old guy sending people on adventures job.
She barked another laugh and swatted him away, calling him a nuisance and taking Hawk back into their little conversation. With that done, they wandered off, arm in arm. Medea leaned against him and whined,
There, can we finally stop being good little heroes and leave already? Oh, does that mean you are going to make the farewell speech? No. That's boy hero work.
He chuckled mischievously.
Oh, just you wait, I will drag you into it. Don't you dare. I hate speaking in front of people. What about at the temple? You weren't scared then, and there was a lot of people down there. Okay, correction, I hate speaking to people who aren't terrified of me. Ah, I see the distinction now.
He played along while he led them up to where the head table was and took a fork. With Medea beside him, he clinked the fork against the glass and drew everyone's attention to him.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for coming to this celebration. I know for many of you it was a difficult trip, as the world is still getting used to peace. But Medea and I are beyond touched that you, managed to come and see us. It really means a lot to see you all and be reminded of how each of you touched our lives. And having said that, we have an announcement.
He turned his smiling face meaningfully towards Medea, who returned his gesture with an even greater and more beatific smile that he could tell was seething with venom underneath.
Yes, that's right. And that is that, we're taking a little vacation. A well-deserved vacation. A little, very long, well-deserved vacation. I will add that it was doctor's orders.
Chesney cut in to mercifully relieve Medea of her speaking duty.
After which we look forward to finding out just what we want to do with our lives. Before all this, I think it's safe to say that both our lives felt already set in stone.
He looked over to her as he continued.
But I learned something from the resistance in Sasquatch. When you don't know if you'll ever have a tomorrow, it makes today all the more precious.
She took his hand, and they both looked back over the crowd.
And I don't intend to squander a single moment of the life all of us have fought so hard for. And I hope neither will you. So, let's raise a toast to a hard-won future.
The crowd raised up their glasses, and familiar faces added to the toast.
To family. To good friends. To freedom. To the future. To peace. To the great ones. To Lennis.
Until at last, Medea took a breath, held out her glass, and said simply,
To love.
They clinked their glasses together, drank of them, and kissed before them all, to giggling, clapping, and cheering from the crowd. Then she reached a hand into her dress and pulled out the remote for the flying time ship and pressed a button. Moments later, it emerged through a bright crack in the sky and hovered close to the floating temple. They walked to an outdoor balcony and waved goodbye to all their friends and family before walking up the walkway into their ship. As a final goodbye, Midia piloted the ship in a great circle around the temple before rocketing off into the night sky, leaving behind a trail of green energy in their wake to wow the crowd. And at last they were off on a new adventure, one in which they would claim their own futures for themselves, whatever they may be. Hand in hand. 2 years later.
Thanks again for letting me be here for this.
Luliette said, bowing repeatedly.
I know I keep saying this, but swear. The final draft revisions are on my desk, and as soon as we're done here, I'll send it in to the publisher. Don't worry about it,
Chesney said.
I'm really glad you could make it here for this.
In the middle of the barren plains of Karen stood Chesney, Midia, Piaz, Mouth, Lily, and Luliette. He knew this was going to be hard for him to do, so while he only really needed Piaz for this, he really wanted to have his friends around for support. They were in the middle of nowhere. Chesney wanted to be sure that no surprises would hurt anyone by accident, but he also wanted it to be clear that this had happened, so he included Luliette at the last minute.
Are you sure about this, Chesney?
Midia asked him for possibly the dozenth time. She'd gotten taller and almost caught up to him in height, but she was just a little bit shy still. She'd forgone her usual spelunking armor she used for their many trips underground, just as he had.
Yeah, I'm sure,
he replied.
I want to make it clear to everyone. The power is gone, and it can't come back. If I don't, this will always be hanging over any future relations built up between the people of Lennis and the people of Raga. I understand your reasoning,
Mouth mused. Mouth had changed somewhat, but he was much the same. He'd taken time out of his usual ruin explorations to take on some more scholarly roles. Even taught a few classes in the magic school on special invitation.
But can we truly be sure it won't be needed again? Yeah, what he said.
Lily agreed, stretching impatiently. She was still all dressed up in her best armor, as she was on loan while on another mercenary job. The girl had actually grown to be taller than him, which had made her tease him a bit. He was sure he'd have the last laugh, though.
Like, who knows what other rag and crap out there could be waiting? No offense,
she added last minute to Piaz.
None taken,
Piaz said, nodding lightly.
And I understand your misgivings, but we've scoured the whole planet for every shred of technology and notes about Dalgren and Gabnid's research. We are confident that now, even in the unlikely event that either research comes to light, we would be prepared to combat it with much more mundane means. Yeah. Literally everything has been burned up and destroyed, and Piaz has confirmed that there is nothing else on Raga that could possibly require this much power,
Chesney said, explaining his reasoning. But it went beyond just a rational explanation. All this time it had been weighing on him. This feeling, and his promise. He wanted to be rid of it, to feel normal again, to find joy in life and be surprised again.
But it's not just that. This power? Every day I have to remind myself to not look to it, to not touch it. Do you know how much willpower it takes to hear about some disaster and not rush over to wash it all away and fix everything? To let people be hurt when I can 100% stop it? To crack open that door, just a little?
A hand was placed on his shoulder, and he turned to see it was Midia looking at him supportively.
No matter what you want to do, I'll support your decision.
He reached up and placed his hand on hers.
Yeah. We've done our homework. We've made sure. Now it's time to seal it. Forever.
This was it. He had no idea what would happen when he did this, but it had to be done. He stepped away from the group, and for the first time in 2 years, he reached up for the power. It felt dangerous and familiar, like trying to wrap his hand around a deadly jet of water. There. He opened his eyes, and the world was once again like a stage, and he could move about and see the props for what they were. Felt the pulse of time pushing them ever onward, inexorably to the future. He strained to not look ahead.
It is returned,
Earth said.
Yes? Whoa, what the crap are those things?
He could hear Lily yell. Ah, right. He had turned aside the veil of the fourth dimension, and those around him could now clearly see the truish forms of the spirits that had been installed there by the Reagans long ago. Mechanical beings and not beings of near infinite complexity. Describing them with words was utterly useless.
Don't worry,
Chesney said dispassionately.
These are the spirits. Please stay back for your own safety. Now, spirits, you know why I am here.
It wasn't a question.
Yes,
They all said.
Do you have any objections? Yes, but they do not dissuade you. Perform your task. Tell me anyway. This method is not absolute. Given time, another civilization could develop the same technology and replace these units.
He had thought of this.
True, but this is as close as we can get without breaking the universe. If the Reagans or anyone else want another crack at this, they'll need to start from scratch. Now tell me how many Kresfeld devices remain in the solar system. There are 2 remaining. Shatter them. It is done. Now generate a 4096-bit random password and set it as the final lock on the power of spirit. Maximum login attempts 3. After 3 failed attempts, permanently lock the account from the spirit network. Protocol mandates I ask it. Are you sure?
They said in unison. Was he? Already this felt so much like taking a crowbar to the final masterpiece of a dead sculptor. It felt like a heinous crime. But no. The crime had been inventing it in the first place.
Yes, I am sure. Acknowledged. In 10 seconds the password will be set. Your account will be logged out temporarily.
Though it was impossible for these beings to have real thoughts and emotions beyond their response model's programming, they added one final word.
Farewell.
In the next moment he was on the ground, blinking into the light of the sky, utterly disoriented. Painfully his thoughts seemed to touch at a part of him that was no longer there. His vision was a nauseating mix of swirling colors, and the world seemed to spin without end. People were talking and shouting, he was dimly aware, but whatever it was they were saying was lost to him. With a final shock he felt something like a little pop inside his own skull, and the world came into focus. Immediately he turned and retched all over the ground. It hurt. A lot. He never dreamed sealing the power would feel so much like losing a part of himself, but it did. After these 2 years he hadn't been aware of just how much those feelings had been mingling with his own thoughts. It scared him that he hadn't noticed. Would it have kept changing him until he finally used it again? Despite the pain, he was suddenly very glad to be rid of it.
I'm fine, just you.
He tried to say, then suddenly retched again. A familiar hand stroked his back, and cool healing energy poured into him. It filled in the cracks that felt like had been ripped out of his body, the energy pooling in his middle and flowing out to every cell of his body. At last, it seemed to wrap up his brain and soothed its pain as well. But he could feel it. A small little empty nook, the nook that was empty for everyone but him, and now was empty again. He stood.
It's done.
And that, dear readers, is the actual truth behind the great conflict that spanned 10,000 years of Lennis's history. I have spent countless hours gaining access to the accounts of all persons in question, including the famous pair who were kind enough to give me a great deal of their time to set the record straight. Though parts may seem almost unbelievable, the account in this book is undeniably the truth verified by countless well-respected individuals. I offer my most sincere thanks to Chesney and Medea for allowing me to publish this book about their experience, as well as my deepest apologies for how long it took to publish. So what has happened in the 2 years since the fall of Zagos? While much is public knowledge, I will share what the famous pair have shared with me. After their lengthy vacation, they did everything they could to aid the reconstruction efforts. Cleanse the Karen region of Sasquatch of all lingering spirits from ancient times. Additionally, they scoured all of Lennis for any more dangerous secrets and destroyed them, all in preparation for sealing the final power that was used to take down the cruel dictator Zagos. Yes, that's right. The power of spirit is exactly as I have laid out in this book, and it is also now gone forever. An event I personally witnessed. I think every reader should take the time to consider what sacrifice truly means. If you had been given the power of a god, could you have put it down? I thank my stars every day I never have to make that choice. And I hear you ask, what of the Rega question? According to Piaz, he and the rest of the remaining Regans on Lennis would like to build New Grant Cirque, a city where the people of Lennis and the people of Rega can coexist. Though it is all still a far-away idea, this author sincerely hopes the plan is a success. And lastly, what is in store for the famous pair now? In short, there is no end of requests for their time, I've been told, though they always lend an ear to those who need it. If you are lucky, you may find them any number of places. Both are taking every opportunity that comes their way to explore what they truly wish to do in life. One thing you can always depend on, though, is finding them together, joined at the hip. Personally, this author is waiting with bated breath for a wedding invitation to end up in her mailbox. Sorry, guys. I'm really a romantic at heart. And so with that, I bid you farewell, dear reader. I cannot tell you what the future may hold, but I believe in all my heart that the future is a bright one for all of Lennis. Luliet, Weight of the World,